My name is Dr. Madison Oak. I'm a vestibular physical therapist, and I'm here to help you with all things dizziness and vertigo. Coffee and caffeine are two things that just kind of can't escape the world we live in, and it makes a lot of people feel a lot worse. So let's dive in. Today, I'm here to talk to you about caffeine and vestibular disorders. Specifically today, we are going to be talking about vestibular migraine and Meniere's disease and caffeine and sort of the effect on them, and if you should be drinking caffeine, if you should take it out of your diet completely, if you should use it sometimes or never, or what have you. The first thing I want to talk about is caffeine as a diuretic. So diuretics generally are there to make you urinate more. So although you are taking in water, caffeine is a diuretic, and also it's a bladder irritant, which is going to make you want to urinate or use the restroom even more. So that's something to consider in terms of being hydrated or not. We always know we want to drink more water. Most people are dehydrated, and so that's definitely something to take into consideration, is that, again, caffeine is a diuretic. That doesn't make it a bad thing to drink. I have some right here, but we're just making sure you're drinking tons of water throughout your day as well, and not just sticking to your 1 cup of coffee a day and calling it quits for the rest of the day. Caffeine in general, I find for my patients clinically, happens to be a really significant trigger for dizziness. And the two groups of people I see this in most likely are vestibular migraine and Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is the failure of your ear to regulate the two kinds of fluid and the pressure that make up your inner ear. So we have two kinds of fluid in our inner ear. It's called endolymph and perilymph. One is made out of sodium, the other is made up of potassium, and they're both fluids, and they kind of osmose back and forth through this membrane. Now, when you drink coffee, because it's a diuretic, it can kind of throw off that delicate balance that's in your inner ear, because for people with Meniere's disease, you don't necessarily have the correct ability for your body to regulate those two things, right? You don't have the ability to regulate them back and forth. And all that means is that taking out things from your lifestyle and your diet that could be adding to this, and adding in other things that are helpful, is a way to manage it. There isn't great research to show this, but I do find my patients who drink less caffeine, take a lot of the sodium out of their diet, increase their water intake, don't drink alcohol, who have Meniere's disease do clinically do better. Next is vestibular migraine, and this is where we kind of really get in the weeds a little bit. Vestibular migraine is on the spectrum of migraine disorders, and migraine is a 24/7, 365 neurological disease that lives in your brain if you've been diagnosed with migraine. That doesn't mean you're going to have symptoms all the time, but it means you live with migraine all the time. It's similar to, I have a thyroid disorder, I always have it, but I don't always have symptoms. It's exactly the same thing. Obviously very different symptoms and diagnosis, but same concept of you live with this thing. Sometimes you have attacks, sometimes you don't, sometimes you have symptoms, sometimes you don't. On the spectrum of migraine, there are lots of different symptoms, and one of the types of parts of the spectrum of migraine is vestibular migraine. And for me and my patients, again, this is very clinically based, this talk, I find those patients who drink coffee and drink caffeine, whether it's black tea, green tea, coffee, what have you, they are dizzier than my patients who are not. The patients who aren't dizzy and from caffeine and drink coffee every day, those patients have exactly the same amount every single day at exactly the same time. They get up at 6 or 6:30 or whatever. They have their coffee at 7, they finish it by 7:30, and they move on with their day. If you can be that regimented about coffee, a lot of times it's not so bothersome. That being said, those same patients, when they take it out, they actually find that typically they're less dizzy. So I kind of just recommend across the board that my patients with vestibular migraine take caffeine out of their diet and lifestyle, at least short term. There's a great replacement called Swiss water processed decaf coffee, and that kind of decaf coffee is decaffeinated through water and time rather than chemically decaffeinated, so there is less caffeine in it, and it doesn't give you that weird chemically caffeine taste if you just really drink coffee in the morning because you like that little warm treat in the morning that tastes so good. So that is definitely a really great option as well with that Swiss water decaf. Now, some people say, well, when I drink caffeine, my headache goes away and I feel better. So yes, this definitely happens. And if your migraine attack is aborted or taken away by caffeine, then that is because caffeine acts on adenosine receptors in your brain. And adenosine receptors are the things that receive adenosine that make you tired at the end of the day. And so by cutting off the amount that they can receive, you are able to feel more awake. And so if you drink a cup of coffee when you feel a migraine attack coming on, then for some people, even with a couple of sips, they'll have Mountain Dew, Coke, coffee, whatever it is, that attack will be aborted. And that's a really great abortive for some people. But the chronic use or the frequent overuse of caffeine really frequently makes people feel worse over time. There is a study by Alstadhag, which I'm sure I am butchering his name, and Andro, which I'm going to link below, that says that caffeine withdrawal can be a trigger for migraine. So if you're going to take it out of your diet completely, that's definitely something to consider. And that if you're overusing and chronically consuming caffeine, so chronic consumption of caffeine seems to increase the burden of migraine, but a protective effect as an acute treatment or in severely affected patients cannot be excluded. So this is going to be different for every single person who lives with migraine. If you have migraine, you're not going to be next to or the same as the next person with migraine, right? And so this is something that's going to be really personal to you. But if you are having vestibular migraine and you're looking to take it out of your diet just to check and see, do not quit cold turkey. Instead, when you brew your coffee in the morning, brew it regular. And then when you're ready to, stop your coffee consumption, buy a bag of Swiss water processed decaf. You're going to put your 3/4 amount of regular caffeine and a 1/4 amount of decaf and do that for a week, where you take out part of your caffeine. Then you're going to do half and half. Then you're going to do 1/4 and 3/4, and then you will be weaned off caffeine really slowly. It usually takes a couple of weeks to a month. And at that time, then you can wean fully. You can keep up with your Swiss water decaf because, again, it is 99.9% caffeine free and does not affect any of my patients with migraine negatively when they drink this kind rather than regular caffeinated coffee. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions about caffeine and how it affects vestibular disorders and if you should be drinking it or not, please place this question below in the comments. Be sure to follow and subscribe. Bye.